All right, this is section 6.4, the percent equation. So let's look at these first three problems. You can see the kind of problems we're going to work with today. The first one says, what number is 50% of 30? And then we've got 15 is what percent of 75, and 24 is 33 and 1/3% of what number? I call these kind of problems percentences because they're sentences and all of them have percents in them. And that's what we're going to do is we're going to solve them today by setting up an equation. But for these first three models, let's look at how they've used this number line, this model. They've got percents on top of the number line. They've got numbers on bottom. So part A says, what number is 50% of 30? Well, one way of thinking about this problem is thinking that 50% would be halfway between 0% and 100%. So if 50% is right in the middle, if it's half, right, we know 50% is half, they've shaded half of the bar, then what number would be half of 30? And that number is 15. So that's one way you could think about these problems. So our answer for this one, when it says what number is 50% of 30, it would be 15. For B here, it says 15 is what percent of 75. So because it says what percent, we're looking for one of the percent answers. So, okay, we've got 0 through 75 written on the bottom here, and then they've counted off by 20%. So you can see they've got 20%, 40%, that missing blank there would be 60%, 80%, and 100%. And on bottom, before we even needed to do that, we could look on bottom and say, well, they're counting by 15s. So we've got 0 to 15, 15 to 30, 30 to 45, 45 goes to 60, they're adding 15 each time, and 60 goes to 75. So now that we've got this filled out, we can say that 15, you can see it right here, 15 is 20% of 75. So our answer then is 20%. And it seems pretty simple to do when they've got this number line already partially filled out. But if this number line wasn't here, making one of these lines from scratch would not be a good way of doing this problem. So although these models actually seem pretty simple, they're not the best way of doing it. It is really nice to see visually, though, what's going on. 15 is only part of 75. So you can see that 20%, you can see the shaded portion here is exactly what we want. And then for C, you see the shaded portion here is it looks to be about 1/3, and if you remember from earlier, we know that 1/3, if you remember on our FDP worksheet, 33 and 1/3% or 33.3 repeating percent is the same as 1/3. So we need to know what 1/3, it says 24, so here's 24. 24 is 1/3 of what number? Is 33 and 1/3% of which number? So we need to know what this number is. So this is a tough one to think about, but you can see they're counting by 24s. So if 24 is 1/3 of the way, then 2/3 of the way would be 24 plus 24, which is 48. And if you add another 24 to 48, you'll get 72. So our answer is actually 72. 24 is 33 and 1/3% of 72. And again, these models are good for my visual learners, but they're not always the easiest way to do these problems. All right, so using a model isn't always easy. Instead, a better way to do this, even if you're a visual learner and you were kind of liking how these models up here were going, a better way to do it, though, is using an equation. We've done equations earlier in the year, and what we're going to do today is we're going to write one-step equations that go with each of these sentences. And to do that, we need to know two things. We need to know that the word is in math means equals. So that one makes sense because if I said the answer is 12, then it equals 12. The one that may be new for us, though, is that the word of means to multiply. So think about this. If I asked you to take half of 20, you would tell me my answer is 10. Well, that's exactly what you get when you turn the of into a multiplication symbol. You get the answer to be 10. So the word of in math means to multiply. So we're going to use that fact when we write these equations. All right, one more thing we have to do if we're going to rewrite these sentences as equations is we're going to convert all of our percents into decimals. That's because we want to use our calculators, right? We want to use calculators when we do these, and calculators are going to be best used with decimals. So let me show you a few examples of what this looks like. So this question says, what number is 24% of 50? So I'm going to start slow for you guys. I'm going to underline. It says what number, right? So what number? I don't know what number, so I know that an equation always has a variable. So I'm going to use n for my unknown, right? My variable. What number? Let's call it n. And then it says is. Okay, so is, we know from our little chart over here, we just said is means equals. So n equals, we're off to a good start. 24%, we know that we're supposed to write that as a decimal, so 0.24. And then we've got of, which we know of means to multiply, so times, and then 50. Now 50 is already a number, it doesn't need to be converted, so I just write 50 down. And then to solve this equation, remember to solve equations, we always get the variable by itself. Well, n is already by itself. All I have to do is to figure out what is going on with the n, right? What is this 0.24 times 50 then? So plugging it into my calculator, doing 0.24 times 50 will give you n equals, oops, let's go back to pencil, n equals 12. And we're done. We have our answer. What number is 24% of 50? It's 12. All right, let's do another one. 9.5 is what percent of 25? So 9.5 is just a number. I copy it down. I see the word is, and I know that means equals. So I replace is with equals. I'm just turning the verbal sentence into an equation part by part. This time, though, it says what percent. So that's going to be my variable, but it says percent. So instead of using n, I'm going to use p. Now, when I answer my question, I need to make sure I convert it back into a percent so I get the right answer. Then it says of, which we know means times, and then we got 25. So this time, p is the variable is not by itself. So what we need to do to get it by itself is we need to divide both sides by 25. We need to get rid of the 25. The 25 is multiplying to itself to the p, so we're going to divide by 25. And 9.5 divided by 25 gives you the answer 0.38, 0.38. So p equals 0.38. But remember that it said what percent is that. So what I need to do is I need to convert that, move the decimal 2 spots to the right, and that gives me an answer of 38%. So answer the question, make sure we answered it. 9.5 is what percent of 25? It's 38%. All right, another one here says 39 is 52% of what number? So all of them are worded differently. This time the what number is all the way over here on the right side of the problem. But we're not going to do anything different. We're just going to break it down part by part, starting with 39. And then is. We know is means equals. Again, hopefully you're starting to remember that. 52%, we have to write it as a decimal, so 0.52 or 0.52. Of, we know means times. And then it says what number. And this time, because it says number again, I'm going to put n. And n means I don't have to convert it to a percent like I did up here, right? That was just if it's asking for a percent. So to get the number by itself, I have to get n by itself, I have to get rid of this 0.52 and ask yourself, what's that 0.52 doing to the n? It's multiplying. So we're going to undo that by dividing. Make sure on these problems on your homework tonight, you are showing your work like I am, because then when you get to this part, you'll know exactly what you need to do. You need to do 39 divided by 0.52, right? So you know that's always top divided by bottom. So 39 divided by 0.52 is 75. So n equals 75, and we've answered the question. 39 is 52% of what number? That number is 75. hopefully you're starting to get the hang of this, and you could probably do these without a whole lot of help from me now. I know it's new, but it kind of just makes sense, right? You're deconstructing the sentence into an equation, and then you're just solving it like we did earlier in the year. So this one here says what number, so you should know that means we're going to put in for number, and then it says is, which means equals, and then 10%, which is 0.1, and then of means times, and then we've got the number 20 here. So n is already by itself. All I have to do to get n by itself is I just need to, last time I was dividing, but since n is already by itself, I just need to multiply to simplify. We have right here what we need to do, right? So 0.1 times 20 is 2. Oops, let's write that with pencil. So it is 2. So 2 is that number. 2 is 10% of 20. Let's look at the next one. 3 is what percent of 600? So 3 is equals what percent? So we're going to put P again for this one. Of means times, and 600. So to get P by itself, we have to divide. It's not already by itself like it was last time. We have to divide 600 to both sides. And yes, that is right. We're going to put 3 divided by 600 into our calculator. 3 divided by 600 is P equals 0.005. And because it said what percent, this is why we put P and not N, we have to convert that. So we're going to move the decimal over twice, and that's going to be 0.5%. So 0.5%. That is not very much, 0.5%, right? Well, think about it. 3 is not very much of 600. So that makes sense. It's not a very big portion of it. It's 0.5%. All right, 8 is 80% of what number? So 8 is 80%. So 80%, think about that. That's quite a bit, right? So 8 is quite a bit of this number. So I'm not expecting the number to be that much bigger than 8. Let's start word by word, or number by number in this case. 8 is equals 80% is 0.8. Of means times what number we're going to put in again. And to get n by itself, we just divide both sides by 0.8. 8 divided by 0.8 is 10. So n equals 10. 8 is 80% of 10. So we have our missing number. All right, let's look at a couple story problems, and we can see how we could use this in real life, because you're going to have some story problems on tonight's homework. So it says, use your bill to answer the following questions. Find the percent of sales tax on the food total. So we want to find what percent are we paying. We know the dollar amount here for the tax is $1.65, but what percent of that is that of our total meal? So the way that I would ask this is I would say, okay, 1.65 is what percent of my total so my total we know is $27.50. Not the subtotal, it said the food total. So of $27.50. And I put a question mark there. So it says find the percent of sales tax on the food total. So okay, so 165 is what percent, so 165 you can see over here, is what percent of 25.50. So now that I've got it as an equation like this, I can convert it into I got it as a sentence, I can convert it into an equation. 1.65 equals, for is, what percent P times 27.50. So now I just need to divide both sides by 27.50. to find out what P is. Remember, P needs to be a percent. So I use my calculator, 1.65 divided by 27.5, and that's going to be 0.06. So because I have to give my answer as a percent, that's going to be 6%. So I paid 6% of my total bill was the tip, and that's what corresponds to the 165. That was 6% of it. Okay, so moving down in our notes, we can see there's another problem we have to do. Same problem with same receipt. This time it says, find the amount of a 16% tip on the food total. So you get your bill back, and you find out that your total price, which you probably knew ahead of time when you bought your food off the menu, is going to be $27.50, right? And we're trying to figure out, okay, so I want to leave a 16% tip. A tip is in addition to what you're going to leave behind, right? So this is where you'd fill out the tip, and then you have to retotal it. If you have ever bought food or sit down at a sit-down restaurant and you've watched mom or dad fill this out, you probably know what I'm referring to. If you've never saw mom or dad fill out their receipt when you're done, then you probably don't know that there's actually a tip line, and then you have to put the total that you're going to pay on the bottom. So 16% tip. We want to know what 16%, so what number, it's a dollar amount, right? So it's going to be a number. What number is 16% of the food total, which again is 27.50. So there's my question. Now I can write it as an equation. What number n equals for is 0.16, 16% of means times 27.50. So all I have to do is take 0.16 for 16%, 0.16 times 27.50, and that's going to give us 4.4. Now, because it's a story problem, I need to label. And last time it said what percent, this time it says find the amount. This is a dollar amount. So I need to put a dollar sign, and I have to put an extra zero to make it $4.40. That's how much we would tip if we're tipping 16% on a $27.50 meal. And we got another problem. This is a Christmas problem here. So we just had Christmas. Maybe you did some Christmas shopping. It says you spend $54 shopping for your family for Christmas. How much is your total bill after 7% sales tax? So in Indiana, we have a 7% sales tax that's charged extra onto our receipt. So we have to pay that extra to the state. So it says how much, so what number, or what amount, right? You could even say what amount if you wanted to, if it makes more sense. What dollar amount is 7% of your bill. And your bill, you spent $54. So what amount is 7% of $54? And if we write it like that, then we can convert it, right? We could use A for amount if you wanted to instead of N. Doesn't really matter. Is means equals. 7%, 0.07 of means times 54. So we grab our calculator. A is already solved for, so we just have to multiply 0.07 times 54, and that gives us, for A, $3.78. That's the amount we're going to pay on sales tax. But the question doesn't say how much tax are you going to pay. It says how much is your total bill. Okay, well, I'm going to pay $54, right? And then on top of that, we're going to pay an extra $3.78 for tax. So I need to add those together, and if you add those together, that gives you $57.78. So that's what our bill is going to be when we get to the cash register, right? That's how much they're going to charge us. $54 for what we bought plus $3.78 for that tax that we just figured out. So that's percent equations. We're going to use these quite a bit as the chapter continues because all of our percent story problems are probably going to, unless they're interest problems, which we'll talk about later, are going to be looking like this, where we just multiply a dollar amount basically to a percent. These are all real life problems that if you ever go shopping or if you are eating at a restaurant, you're going to have to use these percents to calculate how much money you're going to have to pay. So we'll talk more about this later. If you have any questions, let me know.